Wait, before you get into today's episode, I just had to tell you about my brand new masterclass that is coming at the end of September. There are 3 dates and times that I'm going to be delivering it. It's on the 24th, 25th and 26th of September, and it is about starting your podcast and growing your audience. I'm going to be going over how you can make sure that you are getting visible without having to show up on video, how you can create quality content that your audience needs, and how you can grow your audience by getting them to self-select. So come and join me for one of those dates. If you are looking to start your podcast, it is going to be a great masterclass. I'm really excited about it. Come and join me on Zoom. I can't wait to see you there. Your cameras are going to be switched off when you first arrive in the room, so don't feel the pressure to get dressed up or need to be camera ready. I hope to see you there. You can sign up right now by going to donnaeid.com/start and grow. That's donnaeid.com/start and grow. Let's jump into today's episode. You're listening to the Mindset and Action Podcast, the place to be to grow and streamline your business. I'm your host, Donna Eid. Let's jump into the show. Approach each customer with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal, not selling a product or service. Brian Tracy. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I am so glad to have you here today for this episode where we're going to be talking about leveraging freebies/lead magnets through podcasting to help you grow your audience. Now, this is an interesting one. It's kind of in my head like a Venn diagram. So it's like they all feed into each other. So it might get a little bit complicated. I hope not. I hope it's going to make perfect sense to you. But I have got it in my head that I'm seeing a Venn diagram, and in the center of that Venn diagram, that is where the gold is, my friend. So we're going to jump into that in just a moment. I wanted to remind you that my web class is coming up at the end of this month. I'll talk more about it at the end of the episode, but all the links for it will be in the show notes if you want to go and register for one of my live classes about how to start your podcast and grow your audience. So let's jump into this topic of lead magnets. And I'm going to call them lead magnets from here on out, but you might have heard them called freebies. You might hear them called downloads, checklists, ebooks, this sort of thing. All of these sort of free gifts that you give people to start you on the journey. And I just want to refer back to that quote from Brian Tracy that I read at the beginning, because I think that is a really, really important thing to remember when you're creating your lead magnet. So the idea, of course, is that the customer journey is that they come and they find you some way, hopefully through your podcast, but they come and find you some way and they get into your world, and then they might try your free thing, your lead magnet. They might be on your email list for a while, and then eventually they're going to buy the product or service that you sell. That is the customer journey. That is what we want as business owners. We cannot get away from the fact that at the end of the day, we want to make money in our business, because otherwise it's not a business, it's a hobby. So that is the path that we want people to take. However, we don't want it to come across to the client as if we're just after their money, because we're not just after their money. Many people who go into business, many people, if not everybody who goes into business because they want to help somebody do something. So a nutritionist wants to help somebody be healthier with the food that they choose. Somebody who is a photographer wants to help people capture their memories and preserve them for a lifetime. Somebody who helps people podcast wants people to be able to amplify their message and get their important message out to a wider audience, etc., etc. Fill in the gap for what it is that you do. But there is generally that need to help somebody do something when you are starting a business. So yes, we start businesses because we want to make money. We want to maybe not be in a day job. We want to be able to have the freedom and flexibility and the no ceiling that option gives us. But equally, there is something that we're passionate about that we want to provide to people, and we feel that the way that we do it, or the thing that we use to do it, is the best way to do it and to get some great results. So that is what we're kind of looking at when we are talking about the funnel that people go through. What Brian Tracy is saying in that quote is that you have to come from the point of that service part, the bit that you're passionate about. Come to your clients with that passion to help them do the thing and help them and provide as much value as you can. And it's not for the purpose of leading them to the sale. It's from the purpose of wanting to help them. And then the sales come naturally after that. So your lead magnet is a great way to start that journey with them, is to say, here, look, I know that you're struggling with X, Y, and Z. I have this free download, this checklist, this audio series, this video series that can help you on the right path. You're not giving them everything in this lead magnet. It's not everything that you charge for. It is their first step to making that decision to do the thing that they need to do. So, for example, if I use me as an example because it's my easiest option, I have a 3-part audio series on how to build your authority using podcasting. So for somebody who doesn't really know much about podcasting and is just sort of started to hear about it and people are talking about it, maybe somebody said to them, oh, you should start a podcast, and they don't really know the whats and the whys, that is a great place for them to start, because they can listen to that and they can understand how podcasting can help them build their authority with their audience and what that can do for them. Great place for them to start. Another place that is a great place for people to start is my free masterclass, on-demand masterclass, Understanding the Power of Podcasting. So this is for somebody who wants a podcast but isn't quite sure on the why. And last week we talked about that strong why. Not sure why podcasting would be the thing that they want to do. So that helps them to really understand the nitty-gritty of what a podcast is and what it does. So that is also a good first step. I also have a quiz that can help you to decipher what your podcast looks like. So what would suit your personality better? So would a serial podcast over a weekly podcast be better? Would a co-hosted show versus a solo show be better for you? Would you be better off doing it solo or having guests on? These are the questions that I ask in this quiz that kind of give you an overview of what podcast format would suit your personality best, that would work for you. So that is another good place for somebody who's like, yes, I want a podcast, but I don't really know where to start. That quiz is a great place for them to start. So there's 3 of my lead magnets that will give you a good overview of your first steps into the world of podcasting. Now, they could do those lead magnets and they could decide to go off and learn it all on YouTube by themselves. That's absolutely fine by me. I haven't got an issue with that. They are not my clients if they don't want to work with me, and that's fine. But other people will do those things and think, do you know what? I like the way this woman talks. I like the way she is delivering this information. I want to learn more from her. And I can do it quicker if I go through her than henpecking all over the internet trying to find all the answers to the things that I don't even know I need the answers for, which is normally the problem with going out to do it yourself, is you don't know what you actually need to know to look for it. So that is kind of where I come from with my lead magnets, is I want people to just get that first little bit of understanding so that they are ready to take their next steps. And what they do with those next steps, where they go with those next steps, is completely up to them. I just hope that they want to come to me, and I work on nurturing them in the background, sharing this podcast with them in the hope that, you know, the right people, the people that are for me, will come towards me and want to work with me. So that is a really, really, really great quote, and I love that. So I just wanted to dive into that a little bit deeper before we jump into the rest of the episode, because I thought it was a really important one. So looking at the power of the lead magnet, it is there to enable you to start the conversation with a potential client. And it is a crucial part of building your all-important email list. So this is what I mean by the kind of Venn diagram. If you have 3 circles and you put your lead magnet in one, you put your email list in another, and you put your podcast in the other, and then you merge them together so they cross over and get that middle triangle, that is where the gold is, my friend. So if you've got somebody on your email list They could have been on your email list for anything. You could have met them at a networking meeting and they said, yeah, sure, put me on your list. And they've never done anything. And they don't click on any of the buttons in the emails. You don't even know if they read the emails. Sometimes they open them, sometimes you don't. There's just somebody on your email list. Somebody who is a listener of your podcast might absolutely enjoy your podcast. I know that there are likely to be some people listening right now, you know who you are, who aren't in my Facebook group, who aren't on my email list, and I have absolutely no idea who they are from Adam. I could walk past them in the street and I wouldn't know who they are. In fact, this happened to me a year ago, probably about a year ago. I went to an event and I think she is actually on my email list. She certainly follows me on social. It's Jacqueline, I think. I think that's her name. I'm sorry if I get it wrong. But I was at an event and she came up to me and she went, I listened to your podcast. It's the first time that ever happened to me. I was so like, oh my God, that is amazing. Because I just don't go out very many places to actually get that happen anyway. But the fact that it is one of the first times I went out and somebody said, I listened to your podcast, that was an amazing feeling. But it's because she came up to me and told me. If she hadn't come up to me and told me, I would not have known that she was a podcast listener. So you've got the podcast, you've got the email list, and then you get somebody who downloads your freebie. And maybe you have done the fatal mistake of not having an opt-in for that freebie. And by opt-in, I mean that they have to give you their name and email address to get the lead magnet. And if you've done that and you've just given it as a freebie, and there are bigger creators in the digital online space that do this sometimes, and it is a nice thing to do sometimes. People actually like it's completely free, no strings attached, and I get this thing, but that's just then they've downloaded your freebie and they might go away and they might never enter your world again. So you have to bring these three things together. And so what you want to do is you want to feed into all of them. So my email list gets an email every week telling them that there's a new podcast episode to listen to. So they get to go and listen to the podcast. My podcast listeners get told that there is a freebie that they can go and get. So they can go and download my freebie. When people download my freebie, my lead magnet, they are asked for their email address, which gets them on the email address, which gets them the email to my podcast, which gives them the link to my freebie. You see how it works? It's a circle. And anywhere that somebody comes in, it works the same. So if somebody downloads my lead magnet from my website, they get on my list, they get an email to tell them that my podcast episode comes out. They get to go and listen to my podcast. Okay, and then my podcast itself is leading to both of those. So I talk about my freebie so that they can go and download my lead magnet. And I also talk about my email list in Join the Pod Squad. So I mention that sometimes you should come and join the Pod Squad by giving me your email address so I can email you every week and let you know that there's a new episode out. So it all works together to create this little hub of audience building. And that is what you want. You want it to all work together like that. It is so, so important to be building your email list because that is where the money is. And yes, we want to help people. We want to provide that value, and your emails should certainly provide value, and you should be emailing your list regularly so they know who you are. You don't have to do it like all of the time, but I would say just be consistent. So I send one weekly. I think that is an appropriate amount. If you want to do it bi-weekly, you could, but just know that if you're in there weekly on the regular, then every week they're probably seeing your name somewhere in their feed. But if it's bi-weekly, then potentially there is a long time before they're seeing, you know how many emails you get in a week. If they haven't opened any emails for a week, then they're not going to see you in the following week when they come back, and they might just delete you. So I feel like a weekly email is a really good sort of solid place to be. Personally, if somebody emails me more than twice a week, I tend to delete them. I unsubscribe, because I can't be doing with that unless it's a promotion period. And I tend to offer my email list an opt out. So when I go into promotion mode, if I'm going to be sending more than one email, I will say to them, look, this is my promotion for this. If you don't want to hear about this promotion, then click this button and you'll come off of that list, but you'll still get my weekly email, so that they know that they just don't have to get those extra emails, because it might not be the right time for them. They might not be in the right place to be thinking about starting their podcast right now. So they might not want those extra emails, and that's fine. I would rather stay on their list, them stay on my list and get my weekly email and look at my promotional emails when they're ready, than unsubscribe because they're getting too many emails. So yeah, if somebody has sent me a handful of emails and I can see that they're like on my screen, I can see their name like 3 times, which means that they've sent me at least 3 emails in the last few days, I will search their name and see how often they email me. And if it's more than a couple of times a week, they get deleted. But that's my preference. I haven't got time to read them all. That's the thing, is like so many of my emails get deleted and I haven't even opened them, because I just don't have the time to read them all. So I have to be quite selective over the emails that I allow in my inbox, and your audience is likely to be the same. It's if they've downloaded and subscribed to a lot of things, they are likely to only read the ones that sort of really resonate with them. And you want to be one of those people, but you don't want to be annoying. So weekly emails is what I would say is the best. And it's really important to have that because, and I like telling this story, it's not my story, it's Amy Porterfield's story, but it always like hits home to me. The importance of having an email list is that we had a situation a few years back where Facebook went down for 24 hours and the whole world went into panic mode. I mean, obviously the people that aren't on Facebook didn't even know that anything was wrong, but there are so many people that kind of build their businesses on social media because it's easy, quick and free to a point, and they build their businesses on there. And when it went down, they couldn't make any money, and it was a whole day of not making any money. And Amy said that it just so happened, it was a coincidence, it wasn't planned that way. Obviously she didn't know Facebook was going to go down, but that day they sent out an email to their list, a segment of their list, not even their entire list, to offer them a $97 product. It was something that she had in the back there. For whatever reason, they decided to do this offer on it and give it to a segment of her list for $97. And I think she made $17,000 that day, just from sending out that email to her list that she had. And it was only a segment of that list. One product, one email, a segment of her list, $17,000 on a day that a lot of businesses couldn't even talk to their customers, let alone sell anything. So there is great power in having that list. And I would also say that make sure you have a backup of your list, back it up once a month or something so that you have those details elsewhere, because the fact is, technology is technology and it's great when it works, but sometimes it fails. And if you were to lose your email list, that would be heartbreaking. So make sure that you have a backup of it. So the other great thing about having your lead magnet as part of your podcast is that you can promote your lead magnet to an audience that are highly engaged. I tend to talk about my lead magnets at the end of my episodes because 80% of people that press play on a podcast episode listen right to the end. So those 80% are your diehards. They want to listen. They're there to listen. So now when it comes to promoting your lead magnet on your podcast, you want to try and do this fairly naturally. You can have the pre-roll like I do, or the post-roll, or a mid-roll if your platform supports that. So when I say pre, post and mid-roll, these are oftentimes where you will see big podcasters have adverts from other companies. So for example, if you were to listen to the Law of Attraction Changed My Life with Francesca Amber, you will hear like a HelloFresh ad. Not by her, she's not saying it, a completely different person. It's a proper like advert, like a radio ad. You will hear those kind of ads in those kind of places. That's what these roles are. It is a little bit of audio that is separate from the main podcast episode. So you can actually do that for yourself. And it's one of the ways that I say people should definitely use their podcast for themselves in that way, because people are engaged with you and what it is that you do. So they're more likely to be interested in what it is that you're selling and doing rather than an advert for HelloFresh, for example. So if you have a masterclass coming up like I do, you can talk about it in your pre-roll like I have. Or if you don't have a class coming up but you've got a lead magnet, you can talk about your lead magnet in your pre-roll like I do. So you can do that. But you can also mention it in your episode as well. So maybe the theme of the podcast episode links with it. So a great example of this is what happened last week, where I was talking about visibility and building your authority. And then I spoke to you about my 3-part audio series. That was a very natural progression because they link together. So I was able to seamlessly talk about my freebie within what I was talking about in the podcast episode. So really important that you are adding some value for your listener in the first instance, and then offering them more value with that lead magnet on the back end there. Obviously, you don't want it to sound really salesy or repetitive, so I wouldn't be talking about it at every single point within your podcast. I'm not going to do 3 segments and talk about it at the end of each segment. You don't have to do that. It needs to be more of a conversation and by the way kind of thing, rather than, this sort of pressure selling your lead magnet. You don't want it to come across like that. It needs to be pretty natural. And to be honest with you, I don't do nearly as much as I should in promoting my freebies on my podcast, other than that pre-roll. Mainly it's there on the pre-roll, and then I don't really talk about it in the episode, and that is something that I need to adjust for myself and talk about more, because they are really great freebies and I think they are pretty good at helping you make that decision to whether podcasting is right for you or not, whether it's something that you want to consider actually doing. So I need to talk about them more. So go somewhere in between the way I deal with it right now, which is I just don't really talk about it anywhere near enough, up to your, sleazy car salesman where they would talk about it every 5 minutes. Find a medium ground in there somewhere where you can talk about it, make it relevant, and share it with your audience. Now, using your freebie to support your podcast. This is something that I think Amy Porterfield does really, really well. And it is something that I would like to do more of. But as a one-woman band, it is hard to have the bandwidth to do this. So the idea is that your lead magnet can act as an entry point for people who may not yet be listeners of your podcast. So your lead magnet can be out there doing its work for you, and you can have it on your website, you can have it on your social media, and people are going to click onto that, download it. And then you want to encourage them in the follow-up emails in your welcome sequence to come and join you on your podcast. So that's the first thing, which I do that on mine, is to share the podcast in that email sequence. So that's a really good way of bringing people in to listen to the podcast. When it comes to your podcast, one of the great things that you can do is tailor your podcast episodes to a freebie. So Amy Porterfield has literally hundreds of lead magnets, I would say, at this point, because not only does she have her core lead magnets that she specifically talks about around the time where she is looking to sell her course, which is an annual affair for her. So around this time, as you're listening to this, you are probably well aware of who Amy Porterfield is if you are an online business owner, because she is probably in your face somewhere on an advert talking about a lead magnet, because she is in promotion for DCA as we talk, which will be launching in September. So she will be talking about maybe 3 different lead magnets that you could go and download right now, and they will be connected to the boot camp or the webinar that she is going to be doing in the lead up to her course. What she also does is she does podcast episodes where she specifically talks about a certain thing, And then she gives you a lead magnet that is going to support you in implementing or understanding more what she was talking about. So one good example of this is that she had an episode where she talked about the metrics that she tracks in her business. So she was talking about all of the different metrics, from open rates on emails to downloads of lead magnets to social media followers to revenue, etc. All of those numbers, she went through and talked about all of the numbers that she monitors and why she monitors them. And as a gift on that episode, she gave you a download that kind of laid out all of those statistics so that you could go through and mark them off and find out what they are in your business and implement the ones that you wanted to use. And she did state, like, this is me 10 years in. When I first started, these were the metrics that I started with. So she kind of prefaced with that. But you could do something like that where it is something that leads into it. So I could do a podcast episode all about authority building with podcasting, which was kind of what last week's was with the visibility side of things. And I could do I've got a lead magnet that would go with that. But I could then do one, for example, the Be a Good Guest podcast episode that I was talking about last week that I want to do. I could, with that, then produce a checklist for guests that they can download and then they can tick off when they've done them. So it could be something like, make sure that you've got pillows either side of your computer when you're recording, make sure that you've got headphones plugged in, all of these little tick things that would allow them to be the best guest they possibly can. And I could do a checklist for them and they could come and download that. They get on my email list, they've listened to my podcast, they've got the lead magnet. So you can see how that could tie in. And a checklist is quite quick and easy to do. So you could do it as a solopreneur. It's not the fact that you can't, but it's not just the lead magnet. You've then got to create the landing page for them to go to download that freebie. And then you've got to do the form that they fill in to give you their email so they can get the freebie. Then you've got to do the email that contains the freebie that you can send to them afterwards, and a sequence that nurtures them. So it's not just a case of doing a pretty checklist on Canva and putting it out there, because there are other steps. So that's why I say it's like, with the amount that Amy does, where it's like maybe once a month or more, there is some sort of checklist download PDF that goes along with an episode that she's doing. She has got a team behind her that can produce those things. So if you've got a VA on call that you work with, that you give work to, then maybe this is something that they can do, so that you just do the episode and maybe you put together the checklist in Canva and they do all the back end part to make it work. But it is something that needs a bit more planning, needs a little bit more advanced thought. So it's not something that you could like record your episode on Monday, put it out on Thursday and have all this in place, unless you do have a team, you do have a VA, or it's the only thing you're doing. I just know for me that wouldn't work. So you do need to be a bit more planned with the execution of being able to do that. But it's a really great way of getting people to want that freebie, and it is creating that desire for that lead magnet that is going to lead people to actually go and download it. The other thing to remember is to make sure that it is a nice, quick, simple URL to go to. So for me, on my podcast episodes, all my podcast episodes are a bit.ly link. So it's bit.ly/EP for episode, the number of the episode, and then map, MAP. All lowercase. It is like that for every episode. So I just hope that nobody goes on to bit.ly and uses that because that screws me up. I did used to have it that it was like map 256 or something, and there is somebody out there that uses for maps, I'm assuming, for some sort of computer game, and I would have to adjust it slightly. So I came up with my own. It works at the moment. We'll see how long it lasts. But so you can usually find my podcast episodes by doing the bit.ly/EP, the episode number, and then MAP afterwards. And that will get you to my podcast episode. And then you can go to the show notes and find the links there. You can also produce a short code for the freebie itself if you want them to be able to go straight to the freebie. So just make it easy for them and make it easy to remember so that they can go there. Because remember, people who are listening to podcasts are usually not in front of their computer ready to type in a URL when you say it. They are driving, they're in the gym, they're doing the washing up, they're in the garden hanging out the washing, they're in a number of places, in the middle of a field walking the dog, so they're not going to be primed to go and find it. But if you make the episode compelling and the lead magnet is a compelling follow-on, then they're going to go and download it. I know, because I do it with Amy's podcast. So make sure that you do that. So I just want to finish with 3 tips for you to integrate your lead magnets into your strategy. And that is to make sure that any links are included in your show notes. So make sure that if you mention it in your podcast episode, that it is also in your show notes. Make it easy for them to get to it. Your social media promotion, so make sure that it's in your link in bio. Make sure that you're putting it in the comments of social media posts. Make it easy for people to go and get it. If you've got a group, a good idea would be to pin it in a featured post in a group so that people can always find it there. And then don't forget to share it in your email newsletter as well. Recap the episode, give them a direct link to sign up for that lead magnet. So I want to finish off with 3 tips for you for integrating your freebies into your strategy. And I know I've used freebies and lead magnets interchangeably throughout this episode, even though I said I was only going to use lead magnets. So that is my bad. I hope that you kept up with it all. Number 1, start small and be specific. So create something that is really simple, highly targeted, and aligns with your specific podcast episode or a series if you're doing that. So if your episode is on productivity tips, for example, have a download productivity planner or checklist, something like that, that really hones in with the podcast episode so that you can talk about it. And if it's a series, even better. So if you've got a lot of episodes that are going to be covering a similar topic, having a lead magnet that actually fits that theme of those episodes means that you can talk about it again and again and again in each of those episodes and lead people to it. Promote it consistently but naturally. So make sure that you are talking about this lead magnet a lot. Don't overdo it. Make sure that it is part of the natural conversation. So when you are thinking about your podcast episodes, think about how does this relate to the lead magnet that you want to promote in that episode, so it can be a natural progression for your audience and it doesn't kind of feel jarring. It would feel really, really weird if I was to do a podcast episode on being the best guest, for example, and then I promoted the quiz that you can go and do on my website that is about what podcast system would suit your personality. Like, they're like, I want to be a guest, what's that got to do? It's not going to work. Nobody's going to download it from that because they're not looking to be a podcast owner, they're looking to guest on a podcast. So make sure it aligns and then it's a more natural promotion. And then use your lead magnet to build a relationship. So don't just deliver the lead magnet and then ghost. You want to make sure that you have got an email sequence in place that is going to nurture that relationship with the person on the other end. I recently did one of Viv's free networkings and she talked all about this. Her August meeting was all about your welcome sequence. It was really, really great. You can go over and check with her whether that recording is available at all, but I will link her free networking so that you can come along to the next one. It's on a Wednesday. I think it's the 3rd Wednesday of the month. It's changing to the Monday, but that's an aside. The next one is the 3rd Wednesday in September, which might be this week? Next week. Might be next week. I will link it. It's always on once a month, so you can come along to the next one. But it was a really good one to be on because she talked about these emails and she actually said that you want to have a look at having about 12 emails in your welcome sequence, which was something that I'd not considered before. And she actually has 52. So she basically has a email that goes out every week. And once people get to one end of it, it just starts again. She triggers it again and they get the same emails for the next, 52 weeks because like she said, people are in different places at different times in their business, and different things are going to resonate with them. And her emails are quite short and snappy and nicely laid out, so they're not a big like, oh my gosh, I've got an essay to read. So the fact that it's the same, you're not going to know, you won't know unless you're told that it's the same email you got at some point last year. But it keeps you in her inbox. She's able to like let you know about the masterclass, the free networking that she does. She lets you know all of that stuff throughout the year, so you can get access to it. So it's a really good idea to think about, how are you going to nurture people after they download that lead magnet, to make sure that you are actually building a relationship with them, and not just letting them go off into the ether, never to hear from you again. So that is my little Venn diagram of podcasting, lead magnets, and your email list. And I hope that I've been able to show you how they kind of all intertwine and work together to grow your audience. It's an amazing system to use, and I highly recommend it. And even if you're not starting your own podcast as a guest, you can still use this system. You guest on a podcast episode, they will usually let you promote something to their audience. You get to promote it, then you promote that episode to your audience, your social media audience that aren't on your list yet, and they can go and get that freebie. They can go and get on your email list, and you can grow that way as well. So I hope that helps you. Don't forget, I do have that masterclass coming up. If you are looking to start your podcast and grow your audience, then come along. We're going to be talking all about that on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of September. 3 different dates, 3 different times. The same class delivered to you live by me in a Zoom room. So we will be able to see each other if you decide to turn your camera on, but you don't have to. You will be on mute when you come into the room. I've made it so that all cameras are off and all mics are muted on entry, so that you don't accidentally come in making a lot of noise, or that you feel uncomfortable because you have no idea if the camera is going to be on when you first come in. So everything's going to be off. It'll be your choice whether you turn your camera on or not, but you will stay muted for the class. So that is it. All of the links will be in the show notes. This is episode 266, so you know what the bit.ly link is going to be. It's bit.ly/EP266MAP, all lowercase, and you will find all the links over there in the show notes. I will speak to you next week. Bye for now. Don't forget to hit those stars and leave a review of the podcast where you listen if you found value in what you heard today. It's a free way you can help the podcast reach more people just like you.